Politics at the moment in Australia really kind of suck. We don't like the Prime Minister, whoever that is on whatever given day, and we don't like the person who's going to take over from him. Political parties are generally pretty out of touch. The media covers all the wrong issues. Lobby groups actually run everything anyway, and voters are pretty powerless. Young people care so little they won't even engage. And we've got more undecided voters than ever before. It's a pretty depressing narrative, and it's one we get told all the time. So I want to paint another picture. What if I said that we were actually on the cusp of something amazing? That while the mainstream political parties often seem confused, they're actually desperately looking for new ways to engage. What if I said if media was actually surprisingly diverse, with new platforms, new social media popping up all the time, which means we consume information in an increasingly diverse way? That actually companies are increasingly susceptible to social media backlash, which makes consumers more powerful than ever before. That actually voters are increasingly engaged in the issues that they care about. That would paint a different picture, slightly less depressing, right? So for some people who know me, it will seem a little bit odd that I'm standing up here talking about the power of technology and social media. You're more likely to know me from the union movement, where I organised workers, or helping out with 100% renewable, where I trained on community organising, or political organising, where we door knocked and phone called, or Say Yes, where I coordinated a coalition to speak with a united voice during the carbon price campaign. Now, I totally believe in all of those things. I believe community organising is incredibly powerful. But as I was doing all of this, I began to see a change happening. I began to see the internet and technology changing the way we could campaign. And you can thank GetUp and groups like Avaz for that. But then I began to think, what would happen if we got that technology into the hands of everybody? What would people do with it? Would they actually have issues that they cared about that they wanted to campaign on? So I came across to change.org, and that's what I'm beginning to see. I want to tell you a couple of stories about why I think that this more positive narrative is actually the reality that's playing out at the moment. I want you to remember back to the gambling during sports on TV debate. So we're talking about three of the most powerful institutions: the NRL, the gambling industry, and TVs, with unprecedented money and power. And look, people had been working on the issues around gambling and raising awareness about the danger, and we had MPs in Parliament who were fighting away at it. But I want to talk to you about a tipping point. It was when Tom Waterhouse went too far and we risked having him dominating our living rooms. We saw an increasing backlash from Australians. They took to talk back. It showed in polls. They wrote letters to the editor. They jumped on social media. And we saw Matthew, a dad in Gold Coast, start a petition because he was worried about what this meant for his son to have gambling shoved down his throat every time he watched TV. Now, that petition became the second biggest that we've ever seen at change.org. At its peak, it was growing by a couple of hundred every single minute. It got to about 60,000. There was an absolute frenzy by Australians. The Prime Minister, who had a different policy on this, was forced to act. She put on what she quoted as unprecedented restrictions on some of the most powerful institutions in the country. And that happened because people primarily mobilised and backed each other online. We saw another moment where, after years of incredibly brave victims of child abuse in the Catholic Church coming out and telling their stories, we again saw a tipping point when policeman Peter Fox turned whistleblower. And again, the mainstream media started covering it, but then it was when everyone took online, started petitions, went on social media and created a frenzy, that we finally will have a royal commission into abuse in the Catholic Church in this country. It was years coming, and it was that tipping point moment when tens of thousands of people got involved. And we see it in the climate movement all the time. The climate and environment movement is so much better at using technology than its opposition. And we're talking about opposition who has huge resources, huge money, could do whatever they want, but it's our space, we play it and we're winning in it. Look at the reaction this morning that we had when Kevin Rudd made that announcement. We took to Twitter. We want to dominate that so that the media then wants to cover it. So mainstream media follows our actions in social media time and time again. So I want to talk about why it is that we're seeing these moments erupt, these tipping point moments. What we're seeing is a real shift in the balance of power. People are using technology to connect with each other, to connect very fast, to mobilise. They create this people-powered snowball that is knocking out powerful existing institutions and power structures. The point at which you can really tell that power is shifting is when you see the powerful react. I can tell the moment. It's like this loud, whining voice. The key moment that I saw that was Alan Jones. So he really went too far. He said his died of shame comment to the Prime Minister, and people were outraged. People started petitions, people took to social media, they mobilised. And Alan Jones retaliated with, "They're cyber terrorists, they're cyber bullies." Terrorists? Really? I'd like to quote Malcolm Turnbull, who responded to Alan Jones. Perhaps what's actually happening is that Alan Jones is getting a dose of his own medicine, that Australians were speaking for themselves, unedited and unmediated, against a vicious and destructive public discourse. Actually, perhaps what was happening is that people were working in a space that Alan Jones did not control. He did not understand, and he therefore didn't like it. And again, we saw it about a week and a half ago when the chairman of the Maya board attacked Graham Innes, the Disability Commissioner, for speaking out about employment of people with disabilities. Graham Innes's crime, it wasn't speaking to the media, although he did that. It wasn't putting out a press release, although he did that. The crime that he was attacked for publicly was starting an online petition. Why? Why would the chairman of such a powerful institution be so concerned about an online petition? Perhaps it's because, again, he doesn't really understand it and he doesn't control it. People are connecting and doing it themselves without the existing institutions controlling them. The second reason why I think that we're seeing this such significant change is because people are going online to tell their own personal stories. Really raw and genuine stories that people are connecting with. I want to tell you a couple of quick examples. You might remember hearing about Jason Ball, a very brave footballer who came out as gay through a Change.org petition. He mobilised tens of thousands of people to get the AFL, a very powerful institution, to start acting on homophobia. And they are finally starting to move. Or a campaign I worked very closely on with Avril Clark, whose son Jamie died as part of the Australian Army in the Solomon Islands. Because he was a peacekeeper, his name was not going to be added to the war memorial. She mobilised over 40,000 people across Australia, and now his name, along with 47 other peacekeepers, will be added. That's taking on the armed establishment in this country, very powerful institution. She did that online purely with numbers by telling her story. Now, telling stories is nothing new, right? We know, we use them all the time. They're used very powerfully in the climate movement as well. The difference with technology is that you can spread them very, very quickly. People share their story, others add theirs to it, and it spreads and spirals. And it takes the powerful by surprise. And that's what we're seeing time and time again in campaigns. So what does this all mean for the election? At the beginning, I started with two narratives. One that we're told so often, that actually things are depressing and we're powerless. And then a second narrative, which is that actually we do have power when we use it and when we funnel it right. What we need to do in this election is make sure that we don't believe the first narrative and we powerfully tell the second narrative. I have the absolute privilege every single day at Change.org of starting my day and looking at what are people starting petitions on. And what it shows me is that people across Australia care about issues. They care deeply. They know what they like and what they don't like. They want to be shaping what goes on around them. They want to have change. They are very, very engaged. What they are not necessarily engaged with is an old-fashioned style of politics, where you have a focus group message that bombards your TV, crams your letterbox, is on the airways only. And that's what politicians are used to. But in this election, we need to make sure that they don't win the narrative about what politics is. We need to tell the stories about what we're doing, what people are doing online. We need to use the technology that is there for us, that is the space that we can play in that the powerful don't like. So with technology, it's changed our lives in many ways. It's changed the way we engage with information. So think about Wikipedia. It changed the way we did business. So think about eBay. Changes the ways we network with our friends. Think about Facebook. And the fourth great promise of the internet that it's our job to realise is that it changes the way we do politics. That it changes the control that we have to influence the issues that are important to us. So my challenge to you is that that's the narrative that we need to tell in this election. We need to make sure that there's a narrative that does not suck.